Okay, hello my friends, I welcome you for this tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to look at the practical application of variables, data types and operators. Remember, we said that a variable is a named memory location. So when we are writing our programs, we use these variables to store our data temporarily, and since they are called variables, it means the data that they store can change during program execution. And these variables have got several data types, and data type simply means the kind or the type of data. For example, data can be of integer type, of double, single, string, character, boolean, and so on. Now we are going to create a simple program. We write codes and we see how we can apply these concepts and understand them practically. So I will use the codes that you already have in your presentations to create the projects, and then I will be explaining. So let's begin with this simple age calculator project. So we are going to create a new project. Hope your Visual Studio is already open. I'm using Visual Studio 2012. So you can click here on new project, or you can click on file, then still you go to new and choose project, and we are going to create a Windows Forms application. So I want you to follow along in your respective computers. So make sure that Visual Basic is selected here, and Windows Forms application is the kind of application that we are going to create, meaning this option should be selected. Then the name of the application can be any name depending on the kind of project you are working on. So ours is an age calculator, so let me just call it age calculator. Then you can press enter, you can click OK, and note here where you see location, this is the path to where your project is gonna be stored. So my project is going to be stored in the documents folder, in another folder called Visual Studio 2012, and then inside the projects folder. But if you want, you could click on this browse button and then change the location of your project. So let me click OK, and after that you give it some time and wait for Form 1 to be created for you automatically by Visual Studio, and this will depend on the speed of your computer. So just chill and leave Visual Studio to do its work to create Form 1 for you. Okay, finally my computer has created for me Visual Studio. Now in this Visual Studio, I normally like to work in such an environment where I have my toolbox here when it is not auto hidden, and when I have my properties window here. Remember, we said that if any of the panels, all these boxes are closed, you can go to view and then look for whatever you want. For example, properties window, if at all I closed it accidentally, I can go to view and get properties window back. Then this button you see in the middle here, I can click it to auto hide so that I find it here, but I want to stick it on my screen, so I will have to use that button. You can expand your form to any size of your choice. I think this is gonna be enough for me. Now in this project they say create a simple VB.NET Windows Forms application that calculates a person's age based on their birth year and the current year. So these are the steps we follow. We add 2 labels. So I can simply come here and look for labels. So I can double click to add. I can also drag and drop a control. So labels are controls. As the name indicates, they are used to label other objects or controls. Then we add 1 text box. Okay, sorry, we add 2 labels, 2 text boxes. So still I can search for text box. So that is 1 text box and another text box here. Then there is a label 1 text box, birth year. So I come here, I look for the text property. Remember we said that this property is the text that appears on the control or on the object. So this is going to be my birth year. You press enter, of course, to activate it. Then this is gonna be my age, and I press enter. Okay, so I finished to label the 2 text boxes. Then we also need to add a button. So we have a button. I drag and drop it here, and this button is going to calculate. So I change the text property here to calculate. Okay, so I have my button there. Now after that, I have to add the code to the button to create what we call an event handler, and this handler is going to handle what we call the click event. Since VB.NET is an event-driven programming language, the code that we are going to write is going to be executed by clicking on this calculate button. So that will activate or fire what we call the click event. Now to go to the code editor and we add the code to this very button, all we need to do is to double click on this button. So let me do that right now. When I double click, I'm automatically taken to the code editor. Now I'm going to copy this code which you already have in your presentation, and I paste it here. Let me even make my text bigger. Okay, now even if I auto hide this for now, now you realize that we have this wiggly line, the blue wiggly line on txt birth year and on txt age. And we discussed this. This is what we call a syntax error. Why? txt birth year and txt age, as of now, they are not known by our compiler. So the compiler is like, what is this? What is txt birth year? What is txt age? Alright, this is not something difficult to handle. Now the reason as to why we are getting this kind of error is because these names for the controls are not understood. When you try to bring the cursor and we put it there, we can read that word, the statement there. txt birth year is not declared. It may be inaccessible due to its protection level. It is not declared, meaning it is not understood by the compiler. It is not introduced to the compiler. So this is very simple. I'm going to copy this text so that I tell the compiler which control should have this name property. So when I copy that and I go to my form, this control the text box for entering our birth year. By default, when you created it, when you go to the properties, it has a name property of text box 1. But in the code, we have txt birth year, so we have to change this name property here so that it matches the name in the code. So when I paste that and I press enter and I go back to my code, you realize that the wiggly line has disappeared. So the same thing is what you are going to do for the age text box. So we click on that age text box, then we change the name property and press enter. Alright, then voila, no error, so we are good to go now. So we can run our code or our program by clicking on start, and when you click on start, we shall build the program by the compiler, and then we wait for form 1 to come. So this program, we enter the birth year, maybe for example 1990, and you calculate. So the age calculator will calculate for us the age depending on our birth year. So we could even make this a better program. For example, this form 1 doesn't look cool. This is a text box that we are using to display, but I can even enter something, so this is not good at all. And I also want you to realize this: what if in a birth year I enter something like a word 20 and I calculate? So I land into problems for doing that, and that creates what we call a runtime error. So it is saying that input string was not in correct format. Okay, as we continue, we shall see better ways of handling such errors, but in short, we have entered something that is not expected. The input string is not in correct format. We are supposed to enter an integer, and we have entered a string. Okay, I'm going to highlight all of these quickly and also try to explain the code. But let me first make my program a bit better by resizing. So here I can highlight all of these controls and I move them at once. Then I can resize my form to be better. Then instead of form 1, remember, is active, meaning I can change the properties of form 1. So in the text property, I don't like the word form 1. Let me just give it a title: age calculator. Okay, I think this looks cool. Yeah, there are very many properties that you can experiment with here. You can even change, for example, the back color property by navigating. You look for back color. By default I have control, but on this drop down I can click and I get other colors from the drop down. So if system colors are very many, I can have that. I can also go to the web colors. I can scroll and look for any color. You could also explore the custom colors and so on. Okay, let me go simply with that. Then I talked about this. There is a property which can help us to read only. So the read only property for the text box, it means the text box can only read but not capture or be used to input. By default, the read only property is set to false, but when I set it to true, even the color changes. And if I click on start again and I run my project, you see that here I can't now enter. Even if you enter, you try to type in anything, because we want to use this text box to just display, to read only. We can activate the other read only property to do this. But here, since it's false, I can enter my birth year maybe 2000, and I calculate, then still the text box can display my age. Wow, I think this is cool. Now let me explain this quickly, for I have already done this in our previous class, but let me explain it again so that you can follow and revise. First of all, we have public class, form 1, end class. I talked about these. This form 1 here, you see, is a control or is an object, which object also is used to have or to group other objects. We use the form control in VB.NET as a class for other objects. So other objects are put onto the form. What objects are we talking about? These text boxes, the button, the labels. There are other tools here. You know, in VB.NET, the word object, tool, control can be used interchangeably. Now when we go to the code editor, our forms, these form objects, are looked at as classes. So that's why you have the class and we end it from here. So whatever we have inside these two are part of that class. It is public because we want it to be accessible by other classes and objects outside this class. So even other objects and classes that are not on this form can be accessed by this form. That's why by default it is public. So these objects, the form objects, are public. But you see private sub, button 1 click, and very many other words here, then handles button 1 dot click. Now this is a private sub procedure. A sub procedure is a set of codes that when executed can do something, or you can call it a subroutine. So we are creating a subroutine which is going to handle the button's click event. So that's why you see button 1, that's the name of the button dot click. So this is an event, meaning for this code to work, we have to click on this button 1 and then this code will be executed. So we are creating that subroutine. That's the meaning of that. Then we're going to make research about this in the brackets. It is private, that is a modifier. So this code that you write here is only accessible by that button. So it is private to that button. It is not used outside the button. Dim, this dim, and dim. We said the dim is short for dimension, and this is the keyword that we use in VB.NET to create variables. So meaning birth year, current year, and age all are variables. Then we have another keyword called the as, which combines a variable to its data type. So after the keyword as, what we have is a data type. So meaning integer, even this integer and this integer are the data types for each of these variables respectively. Then this equal to sign you see is called an assignment operator, not the equal to. In VB.NET and in other program languages, we normally have double equal to mean equal to, but when it is single, then it's an assignment operator. And what does it mean? Whatever you see on the on your right here, on your right, and even here, we are assigning it to this variable on the left. So the evaluation of this expression, or the result of that, the value we get from there, we assign it to this birth year, and we expect an integer value. So that's the data type. The kind of data that we get here is supposed to be an integer, then we store it in that variable called birth year. So this equal to sign is an operator. This minus is also an operator. An operator is a logical or mathematical symbol that is used to carry out expressions. That's an operator. So we use operators and operands. An operator combined with operands creates what we call an expression. For example, if you have a plus b, a and b are operands, the plus is the operator. Now let me explain this quickly because I did so. Txt bath here, we have said that it is this text box. When you go to the properties window, that's the name, txt bath here. So we are referring to this text box. How do you know the name of this one? When we click onto it, we see its name, that it's called txt edge. And what is the name of this button? When we go to the name property, we see button 1. What's the name of this label? It is label 1. What about this label? It's label 2. So all controls have name properties, which name properties are unique within the form. So you cannot have any two controls with the same name on this very form. And in the code editor, we refer to these controls by their names. So when we say txt bath here, we are referring to this text box. Now dot text, this text is a property. After a dot, we normally have a property or a method, but anything called a method should have parentheses. For example, even if you say Peter and you see this in programming, that means Peter is a method. But if you find the dot maybe hello, that hello, when it is like that, that hello now is a property or an attribute. But if you see hello with that, those are parentheses, then that means hello is a method. So since we see a dot, the dot notation is used to combine properties and methods to call properties and methods on objects. We use the dot notation in object-oriented programming, and remember VB.NET is an object-oriented programming language. So text is a property, it has no parentheses. Being a property, what does it mean? We are referring to this property here, text. By default, text boxes have an empty value for the text property, so you see nothing here. But when I try to type anything like Hudson and I press enter, when I press enter, you see that Hudson appears here. That means Hudson is now the text property for this text box. So since this text box is called txt bath here, when I say txt bath here dot text, right now the value I will return is Hudson, because that's the text property. That's the value of our text property. But we said by default it is nothing. So let me take it back. So what does it mean for our code? Anything when we are running this code that the user enters in this text box will become the value for the text property. So if you enter your year like 2000, then that value 2000, we are capturing it using that code txt bath here dot text. Now the whole of this is passed as an argument for this parse. What is parse? Parse is a method. Here we see integer dot parse, meaning integer is an object, which integer object has a method called the parse. And whatever we put here, we are using the parse method to capture. What does this code do? With the parse, if we have integer, it means we are trying to capture or to enter an integer value using this txt bath here text box. If that value that we put is really an integer, that's good. That value is going to be saved in bath here. That's how we capture it and we save it in bath here. But the way this parse works is like, if the value we pass in does not fulfill this integer requirement, if the value is like a word or anything which cannot be an integer, that value will not be captured. We shall get an error. That's why you saw that when I put in a word, we were getting an error. So when we put a right integer value for our birth year, we shall save it in the birth year variable. Then we have current year. We have date dot now dot year. Now this year, you see now dot year. That year is a property. Now is an object, and the date time is an object which has another object. So it's like you have a folder and then you have a subfolder in it, and then that subfolder has a file. So that's an example. So this is like the date class or library, which has now as one of its objects, and this object has several attributes or properties like year. So here we are capturing the now year. We first get the date, but which date now? So the date of now, and we are only interested in getting the year. Remember, the date can be, for example, Wednesday 12 May 2024. But instead of Wednesday 12 May 2024, we are only interested in the year 2024. So that's why you have now dot year. So 2024, because that's the now year at the time of recording this, is going to be captured using this code, and we save it in this variable current year. Now after that, the age variable is going to store the evaluation of this expression, and we have current year, which is now for 2024, minus the birth year, whichever birth year you enter, and current year minus, of course, your birth year will give you your age. So we have a subtraction operator here to subtract. Then that variable we get, we are assigning that age to txt age.text. Remember, we said text is a property, so txt age is this text box called age. When we say .text, we are referring to its text property here. Now we are using this code to give it a value, which value is got from age. But since age is an integer, and by default text boxes are created to display strings, we use the toString method. So this is a method toString to convert our integer value to a string value, so that we display our age without any problem. So that's the usage of this toString method. So in other words, we are using this code to display our age using this text box. So that's how this code works. Let's run it again and we see. So you can enter your birth year, like 2012, and then calculate. So it calculates 12. Oh, so that is wonderful. I hope this has cleared many of the challenges you have been encountering, and you can replay the video to better understand the code. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and share the video. God bless you.